Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and Tebow.
Welcome back into the Redbird Report alongside Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. We have the great studio behind us, and the backdrop of the Cardinals season is not so pretty right now. Cardinals lose 4-1 in the third game of the series against the Atlanta Braves, and this one was ugly to watch. The offense was mostly non-existent, but that's not the storyline today. Yes, they scored one run, but they went into the late innings with every opportunity to win the game. T-Bone, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so this is all fresh for us as we're recording the show today. It was once again an implosion by the bullpen. And I know there's going to be a lot of criticism of Ollie for the way that he deployed the arms that he has available to him. And I guess that's fair. That's fine. You can blame whoever you'd like to for the Cardinals blowing this game. The reality is they don't have the arms. Like this team is hemorrhaging runs late in these games. Even when Miles Mikolas goes 6 scoreless innings for the Cardinals, they still find a way to lose in these late inning games. So today, Wednesday, the final game of the series against the Atlanta Braves, they go to John King. He runs into trouble. So they have to bring in Kyle Leahy earlier than they would otherwise want to. So Kyle Leahy comes in, he gets him out of the trouble. He's good to go. And all he had to face was, Austin Riley and Marcell Ozuna. Super easy thing for him to get through. Then they go to the 8th inning, and it's JoJo Romero who comes into the game, and he has his struggles. So what do they have to do? Well, we got right-handed hitters coming up. We're going to have to go to a righty reliever. And that means Ryan Fernandez enters the game. And Ryan Fernandez, when he enters the game right now, T-Bone, I'm sure you've had these moments in your life where things just stop for a second. Everything starts moving a little slower, and you can see clearly exactly what's about to happen. For me, it's with my son, right? My son, his name is Luca, and there was a situation a few months ago now where he's on the couch and he's insane. He's 20 months old. So he's just running around. He's going crazy, right? And you can see what's about to happen. He's about to fall. And it's coming, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. And that's what I feel like right now watching Ryan Fernandez when he enters the game. He entered the game, and the game was 1-1, and you knew what was about to happen. There were 2 runners on. Fernandez enters. Boom, homer by the Atlanta Braves. There's your ball game, folks. I don't know what Ollie Marmol is supposed to do in these situations. There's, frankly, nothing he can do in these situations. Could he have gone to Swanson there? Sure. He's appeared in exactly 1 big league game, and you're asking him to get out of that inning with 2 on, and I believe at the time there was 1 out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That's a really tough spot for a young guy who's appeared in 1 baseball game in his major league career. So it's a long-winded way to say, T-Bone, the Cardinals have to face facts at this point. The bullpen's just not good. You need to make changes to the bullpen. I'm not sure they're willing to make the changes that are necessary to the bullpen. Is there any way to save it? Because we're too early in the season to just completely give up on this thing.
I don't think there's any way to save it the way it's currently constructed. I mean, they're saying all the right things about, hey, we want to work with Fernandez. We think we can help him at the big league club. You know what? That's fine. I understand that. And I think to a certain extent, it's fair to say, hey, sometimes you have to push through struggles. But not when you're hemorrhaging right now from this bullpen. I mean, their bullpen's been terrible. Like, face facts. I mean, they've got nobody they can trust outside the big 3 in Leahy, Maton, and then Ryan Helsley. I mean, you mentioned it. You laid that out perfectly today. I don't know how Ollie was getting through that game if Mikolas couldn't get you through 7. Like, it was going to be a task, and you basically just had to hold your breath with whoever you turned to.
And that's because Maton was down today because he's thrown in, of their 25 games, 27 of them, conservatively speaking. He throws every day. Eventually, you have to have somebody else that emerges that can give you some semblance of confidence that can get through a 7th inning when the game is tied, when you're up by a run, when you're down by a run, keep that game close. They just don't have those guys right now.
And they want to at least try and get Fernandez into these lower leverage spots. Well, there's 2 problems with that right now. One, you can't script that. There's just no way to plan around it. Like today, you had to use them. There was just no other way to get around it. And 2, as much as you want to say, well, we'd like to throw them in a game when we're up big, how often does that happen? You can't just plan on that. The other team's not going to say, oh, you want to get Fernandez in when we're up 10-4? Okay, sure, go ahead. The other thing, too, is they've got so many guys that have to have that right now,
Yes.
right? JoJo has to have that. John King, to an extent, needs to have low-leverage situations. Swanson, not because he's not pitching well, but because he's just a kid, right? You want to just kind of build him up a little bit, gain some confidence at the big leagues before we shove you into a high-leverage spot. And then you add in Ryan Fernandez. That's 4 bullpen arms you're telling me that you have to basically say, well, we need them in low-leverage situations. I'm sorry, you can't operate a bullpen like that. So they've got to start looking internally for answers. They've got to explore whether that is out on the open market to potentially say who gets DFA. Maybe there's somebody that we can play with. Or to me, I think there's 2 things they can do right now with this bullpen. I think it is, 1, you option Ryan Fernandez and you call up Riley O'Brien, who's been electric so far in the minors. Had 1 bad outing, but he's got swing and miss stuff. He's got the strikeout stuff that this bullpen desperately needs. I don't think we talk about it enough. But when you take a look at where the bullpen is right now for the St. Louis Cardinals when it comes to just strikeout stuff, they are near the bottom. They are 25th in strikeout percentage coming into today as we record this, and I wouldn't be shocked if it drops a little bit after today's performance. The other thing for me is they clearly don't have a left-handed arm, right? You mentioned John King coming into today's game. Neither one of us felt comfortable about that. Anybody watching the game probably didn't feel comfortable about him going into that situation. And then they get to another spot. What do they need? They need another left-handed high-leverage reliever. So what do? They turn to JoJo. None of us felt comfortable about that as well. They don't have a left-handed bullpen arm they can trust right now because their best left-handed arm from last year is in the rotation in Matthew Liberatore. So I think the option they're going to have to go with here is they're going to have to make Steven Matz the high-leverage left-handed arm. Rather than deciding to use him as this multi-inning kind of Swiss Army knife role, basically the role Liberatore was in last year for spurts of the season, which is, hey, you're kind of the 6th starter. You're also kind of going to be a long reliever for us. To me, he just becomes a high-leverage left-handed arm. And if you want to stick to a 6-man rotation, fine by me. If you want to try and keep the starters healthy, you, instead of saying, hey, let's use Matz in that role, you call it McGreevy, have him make the spot start, and then you send him back down to the minors. I think that's the way they're going to have to approach this moving forward because they can't continue to run out the bullpen the way that's currently constructed.
Option 2, another scenario, you understand that this is who you are. And you look at the season and say the wins and losses are not everything. A big part of what this season is about is twofold. 1, maximizing the return on whatever you're going to get at the deadline. And that includes Steven Matz, who might be worth more as a starter than he is as a reliever. I don't know if that's the case, but I think that's probably something they're at least considering. And 2, continuing to run out these young guys to find out what you have. Now, in the bullpen, that's harder than in other positions because in the bullpen, you developed Ryan Fernandez, man. This was a win. The Cardinals got him in the Rule 5 draft. They gave up nothing to acquire him. And last year, he was a really reliable arm for them. He got him out of some big-time jams. He was somebody that you could trust in the 7th or the 8th inning. He became one of those right-handed arms. He was last year's version of Kyle Leahy. Kyle Leahy, nobody expected to be this. And it was clear early on, oh, this guy's just more than we expected him to be. It's a really nice right-handed arm. What will Kyle Leahy be for you next year? I have no clue, man. He might be a guy that ends up doing exactly what Ryan Fernandez is doing right now. So the value of developing these bullpen arms that are middle inning relievers, it's just not that significant. It's the easiest thing to overhaul at the deadline. It is the hardest thing to predict year over year. So I don't know what the value is on developing these guys at the back end of your pen. In season, it's huge. Over the long haul, though, it's hard to say. So part of this is, what are you doing with Steven Matz? What is the goal here? If the goal is to maximize his trade value and that takes precedent over stabilizing the season potentially, interesting way to operate. Also a tough message to sell your fans on. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that would be the only reason you wouldn't do what you're talking about, T-Bone, because McGreevy could be inserted into this rotation as a de facto 6th starter. Other teams have done this. We've seen the Cardinals do this in the past. That was basically Tyler Lyon's career that early on here in St. Louis. He'd come up for a day, go right back down to Memphis, come up another time 3 weeks later, and then boom, going right back down to Memphis. But that is the alternative. What I think they should do is what you're saying at a minimum, even if you don't do the Steven Matz thing, even if you just leave that be, you've got to send Ryan Fernandez down, man. I want to read you a quote. This is from Ollie Marmol after the game when they lost and Ryan Fernandez blew it again. He's not himself right now. Quote, and by the way, this is courtesy of FanDuel Sports Midwest, the reporters that were down in Atlanta. This is who we've got. We have to get them back on track. There's nothing coming from down below that's going to change what's going on here. We have to get these guys better, and the only way for them to do so is to pitch. We're going to keep going with them, end quote. Now, I don't know if that is Ollie Marmol's decision, ultimately. That is a management decision. That is John Mozeliak and his team. They get to decide who the bullpen arms are that are available for Ollie to deploy on a day-in, day-out basis. But that sure makes it seem like they're going to keep going with what they're doing right now. And to me, I just don't understand the logic in that. At a certain point in time, you've got to cut bait, man. And this is not cutting your losses on Ryan Fernandez. He can still be around. Chris Roycroft didn't just go elsewhere. He's in AAA right now, and he's figuring it out. His velocity the other day was up to 98 miles an hour. The shape of his fastball was right back to where it was last year. He might be fixed. He might be able to come back in a week. And now you've got another right-handed arm with velocity that can factor into the 6th or 7th inning. Why? He went into a less pressurized situation. Fernandez, these are his 7 of his 11 innings, or 7 of his 11 outings. I'm going to read these to you real quick, T-Bone. Top of the 7th, up 3-2 against the Angels. Gave up a walk, triple, game gets tied. Cardinals end up losing that one 5-3. Top of the 10th inning. Again, game is tied 3-3. This is against the Angels. Gave up a triple and a single. Cardinals end up losing that game 9-6. Bottom of the 7th inning. Cardinals are down 8-6 against Boston. You're trying to keep this one close, inserting Fernandez into the game. Gives up 2 singles and a walk, then a fielder's choice. Boston ends the inning up 11-6 after they removed Fernandez from the game. They end up losing the game 13-9. The reason I find that to be important, they went into that inning down 8-6. They scored 9 runs. If he was able to keep that thing clean, they might have had a chance in the 8th or in the 9th inning. Bottom of the 10th inning, again against Boston. You guys remember this one. Intentional walk against Casas. Story pops out. Abreu singles. Boom, game over. Red Sox win. Bottom of the 9th, tied 4 against the New York Mets. Lindor leads it off. Home run, gone. Game over. Cardinals lose again. Bottom of the 8th inning against the Mets as well. Gives up 3 doubles and a walk. Leaves the game down 7-3. Cardinals lose at 7-4. And today, bottom of the 8th, 1-1. Enters with 2 on, 1 out. Gives up the homer on the 3rd pitch. Cardinals end up losing that one 4-1. That is 7 of his 11 appearances. If that's not in his head, he is the strongest mental player I've ever seen in my life. How could you not be in your own head? If that is 7 of your appearances, dude, it's constant late inning situations, coming into a game that's tied and you blow it for your team, or even in the scenario where it wasn't all that close. It's 8-6, which is still a leverage situation for you. You're trying to keep that thing close. Somehow the Cardinals find a way to score the 3 runs that would have won them the game if Fernandez didn't give up any runs in that inning. So you've got to make the switch. Riley O'Brien's been solid down in AAA. You could just flip those 2 guys. You've got to trust Swanson to come into some of these games. You're going to have to trust Riley O'Brien, and that comes down to Ollie Marmol. But right now, this has to be a Mo decision. Mo is the one with pressure on him right now, not Ollie Marmol. And Mo has to make the choice of, it's best for us as a team to go ahead and make this switch. Because I have to imagine there are guys on the team right now. I don't know this to be true, but this is my assumption based on, human nature. When Fernandez comes into the game, I think even the guys on the team know, something bad's about to happen.
Yeah, and look, to the Ollie's quote there of, hey, we don't really have answers down below. On the left-handed side, that's fair, right? They don't have another lefty on the 40-man outside of Thomas, who's on the 60-day. Exactly, that's going to be my point. Well, to me, you've got that guy in Steven Matz, and you shouldn't be focusing right now, if you're the St. Louis Cardinals, on maximizing guys' trade value. And I'll get to the reason for that here in just a second. They've got options here on the right side. They've got Riley O'Brien. At some point coming up here in the near future, Roycroft, if he's not already to the 15 days, I don't think he is yet. The minimum, he's got to be down. He's getting close. And if his shape of the fastball looks better, he's been able to work on that in the minors and the low leverage situations. It's worth giving it a try again. To me, you've got to start rotating through some of these guys and figure out your answers. But here's the reason that I agree with what you said earlier of look, I don't understand the whole hesitancy of, hey, we've got to make sure we develop these bullpen arms, because that is something that is a season-by-season thing. Typically, you don't get answers on a lot of these guys that are going to be successful for 3+ years in the bullpen. And the reason I say all of this, and the reason I think you have to start not focusing more on the maximizing of Steven Matz's trade value, is the fact that if they fix this bullpen, this team could be winning baseball games. And I know that their goal is not about, hey, we're not necessarily focused all about the wins, right? We're not making roster decisions about winning. We're making roster decisions based on, hey, here's what we want to do to help create runway for young guys. None of these roster decisions that I am talking about are impacting runway for pieces that are going to affect the St. Louis Cardinals for 2+ years and beyond. Bullpen arms aren't that. That's what makes this so frustrating is if they can just kind of right the ship with this bullpen and stabilize this thing, I think this team can win baseball games. And it's not any roster decision that impacts like a Jordan Walker or a Nolan Gorman or an Alec Burleson or a Thomas Saggese, guys that you really need some answers on. No, Ryan Fernandez can go down to the minor leagues and work on things, and maybe you don't see him again this year, for example. That doesn't necessarily mean he's just gone into the abyss. It's okay to send these guys in this bullpen down. Like, you look at the Cardinals bullpen from 3 years ago, how quickly it went for some of those guys. Now, some of them were older, like Gallegos was older, Cabrera was a little bit older, but they lost it like that. Snap of the finger, it is gone.
And that happens.
Exactly.
That's the life of a reliever.
I think you have to look at it for if you're the Cardinals. And even for starters like Tristan McKenzie, we talked about this on our show. Tristan McKenzie had a sub-3 ERA as a starter for the Cleveland Guardians 3 years ago, and it's just gone. He's terrible now, got DFA'd by Cleveland. If you can fix the bullpen, you give yourself a chance in these games, and it kind of plays into what you're talking about, the human nature of what those young kids have got to be feeling of, oh boy, here we go again. We're turning to our bullpen. What are we going to get today if we're not going with our 3 big arms? If we're going to the underbelly of our pen, man, we're going to have to score 9 runs. Talk about putting significant pressure on some of the young kids that are in this lineup.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at what they've been able to do offensively. Like, they're giving you a chance in most of these games. Now, today was not that. Today, they were only able to put up 1 run against the Atlanta Braves, and that's not good enough. Nobody is making excuses or explanations for that. But by and large, 7, 8, 4, 4, 4, 6, 10. They lost 3 of those games that I just mentioned. They shouldn't be losing those games. And it's not the rotation for the most part that's blowing up on them. The rotation is kind of stabilized here, man. It hasn't been perfect. It wasn't a great start the other night for Andre Pallante, but he got you through 4 1/3. He mostly limited the damage despite that 1 inning that really blew up on him. But then you were able to go to Steven Matz, you stabilize things again, you get to the back end of the bullpen, you win the baseball game because you scored 10 runs. So the offense is doing its job for the most part. Today, 6 innings by Miles Mikolas, no earned runs allowed. The rotation has mostly done its job. It's just this bullpen. The defense has been mostly okay this year. I don't think it's been a problem for them at all. Base running at times, you can say, has been an issue where they're running into outs, but that's really just been like limited to a couple of games here or there. Otherwise, I think it's mostly been, I would say, average at a minimum. It's just this bullpen. This bullpen is the thing that is preventing you from being slightly above 500, and instead you're 5 games below 500 as we hit the 25-game threshold. So the other thing that I wanted to get to, you mentioned developing these bullpen arms. It's just not the end-all, be-all. I think they've told you that with their own actions. Look at Matthew Liberatore. If they thought it was the end-all, be-all to develop a bullpen arm, well, then Libby would be in your bullpen right now. He was your best left-handed reliever last year. He could be Andrew Miller-esque, maybe like 80% of Andrew Miller coming out of the pen. He's got that kind of stuff from the left side. But you decided it's more valuable for us, and they should have, to use him as a starter. If he can become a mid-rotation starter, well, that's way better for us long-term than if he's a nice 7th or 8th inning reliever. You can find those guys at the deadline for this 8th best prospect in our system every year. So that's kind of the way that I view this. I don't understand, honestly, the rationale as to why they are so hesitant to send down some of these arms that are struggling. They did it with Roycroft. And I know Roycroft is a bit different than Fernandez because Fernandez was so successful last year, but Roycroft went down and you saw what the results were. They did this last year on a starter with Andre Pallante to get him built up, for him to fix his arsenal. He went down, worked on some things, came back up, and it was the best thing for them. It was a success story of what it can be when the Cardinals organization operates where the AAA level and the major league level are collaborating on a player to find out what is the best plan for this player. They did it with Pallante. They're doing it right now with Chris Roycroft. Why is it that they are so hesitant to do so with some of these other guys? And specifically, because you're right, left-handed, it's a little tougher. specifically with Ryan Fernandez. That seems to be the guy that they are refusing to do this with, and I don't get it.
And the other thing that I don't get, because it goes to messaging, right? We always talk about messaging with the Cardinals because, let's be honest, they're not very good at it. How can you say, hey, April's very important for us because we believe we want to bring back the fans? We want to see if we can win in April and see if that starts to pull people back in, because you look at Busch Stadium, it's empty right now.
It's rough, man. I went to a game last week, I guess it would have been. It was as dead as I have seen it, and I've been living in St. Louis now for a decade. And before that, I mean, it's 20 years of success. So
yeah, I was going to say. But, like, okay, so if you're going to sell us on that, okay, and we both agree, like, I think the offense, people can start to buy into the offense a little bit. I think you've seen a little bit of that, at least the vibe I've gotten from when we do the show, BK and Fargo from 11 to 2 on the text line. I get a little bit of a vibe of, okay, maybe people are buying into the offense. We know people are going to buy out on the Cardinals, not by anything the offense is doing. They're doing their job not today, of course, but for the most part, they're doing their job. They've scored 5+ in 12 to 24 games coming into today. So they had done their job. You get people not to buy in when you just have a bullpen that you're not willing to change to give yourself a chance. If April was so important, then why are we just watching the team sink into the abyss right now from a team that was 6-7 and is now 10-15?
And T-Bone, is this not a theme?
Exactly.
Like, how many times have we talked about this in recent seasons where, guys, do you not realize that this is a problem? This is a problem. There are blinking lights. This is a problem. And they don't fix the bullpen, or they don't see the need to switch out a starter, or they somehow didn't foresee the problem of they don't have innings from their starting pitching, or they don't make an aggressive move to bring up somebody from AAA. Like, it's been a theme for 5 years now with this organization. They're conservative almost to a fault to make some of these decisions. And I will say, at times, it's worked out for them. One thing that immediately comes to mind for me is the Jordan Hicks decision. We had all called for them to DFA Jordan Hicks. Now, that is much different than the current situation. There was no ability really to let Jordan Hicks go back down to AAA. It was get rid of him. You need him to go elsewhere. He cannot be on the roster any longer. He's clogging up a spot. And so the results would have been he goes elsewhere, you get nothing in return, somebody else fixes him, and we saw the rest of that season. He became a super valuable piece, eventually became a trade commodity, so it was the right thing to do for them to stick with him. This is different. You can't option a guy like Ryan Fernandez. Last year, you couldn't have. If he struggled like this last year and he was in the first year of his Rule 5 status, he has to be DFA'd and returned back to the Boston Red Sox. This year, you can send him down, man. This is within your control. You get to choose. You get to decide if you're going to put him out there again to get his teeth kicked in, or if you say, you know what, we're going to lessen the pressure a little bit for you. We're going to take you out of the pressure cooker. We're going to have you go back down to the AAA level. They did this with Nolan Gorman. They did this with Matthew Liberatore. They did this with Jordan Walker last year, man. And it's Ryan Fernandez who they're refusing to send back down to AAA. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, which leads me to believe I think they're going to do this. Like, we're recording this on Wednesday. We don't know what's coming. By the time you're listening to this, it's entirely possible you have news one way or another on what the future holds for Ryan Fernandez. So I'm going to ask you to make a prediction that may sound incredibly stupid 36 hours from now. But what do you think they do? Do you think Friday, when they take the field against the Milwaukee Brewers, Ryan Fernandez is a part of the roster?
I don't. I don't see how he can be a part of the roster come Friday against Milwaukee. I think they're going to have to make the change. I think they will call up Riley O'Brien. I think they will make the move. I think you laid it out perfectly. You're not losing him, right? This is a different conversation. Like Jojo Romero, you would lose him. He can force your hand and say, put me on waivers. I don't want to go down to the minor leagues because he's out of minor league options. My guess is Ryan Fernandez goes down. Riley O'Brien is up.
I think I agree with you. The one thing that makes me a little hesitant, and I'm just doing this based on specifically Friday against Milwaukee, I believe Chris Roycroft is eligible to return on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to check in on this to make sure the timing is exactly right. I think he was sent down on the 10th or the 11th. It was one of the two. So it's possible they would say, you know what, we're sending down Fernandez to go into the Chris Roycroft factory. That basically, you go down, do what Roycroft did. We'll see you in 15 days. And they do that for Roycroft. And if they have to wait until Saturday to do that, it's possible that Fernandez is there for that Friday game, just logistically. So I will say, in the heart of the question, he is sent down this weekend against the Milwaukee Brewers, whether that be before the game on Friday or on Saturday. I do not think that we will see Ryan Fernandez pitch again for the Cardinals within the next 15 days. I don't think that's likely for them. All right, coming up next, we got to talk about the Cardinals recommitting to another left-handed bat. They have gone in and out on multiple pieces since the start of spring training. At one point, it was Nolan Gorman is the number one guy that we have to commit to. And then on opening day, he was the odd man out because Victor Scott earned the spot into the lineup. Now he's back in. How do you make this work with the playing time? We'll tell you next here on the Redbird Report. So the Cardinals are recommitting to Nolan Gorman. They went into the offseason, and that was the plan. Gorman was one of the guys that they needed to get answers on, T-Bone, coming into the season. You get into spring training. He had a bad spring training. Burleson was solid. Victor Scott was great. And they decide, okay, it's going to be Victor Scott in center field, which pushes Lars Nootbaar to left. It means Brendan Donovan is there at second base for us. And because Alec Burleson had the better spring, he's going to be our regular DH going into the season. So that means, of course, Nolan Gorman is pushed out of that spot. Well, they go with that for a while. Nolan Gorman ends up kind of hitting a little better as they get into the season, and then he gets hurt. So Alec Burleson got an extended runway, and once again, we're back to what it was at the beginning of the season. And now Nolan Gorman comes off of the injured list. Alec Burleson has been struggling, and so they are reemerging from this by saying we are committed to the runway for Nolan Gorman. As if we didn't hear what they said going into the season or didn't watch any of the games when they weren't committed to Nolan Gorman. So Ollie Marmol said he's going to be in each of the next 4 games. That's the plan. We need to see what he can do, blah, blah, blah. I'm cool with this, T-Bone. I got no problem with it. I mentioned on our show that we do, I would have considered sending Alec Burleson down in favor of Thomas Saggese staying at the big league level when Mason Wynn returned from the injured list. So I'm totally cool with Gorman taking the at-bats for Alec Burleson. I will be interested to find out, what is the runway here? He mentioned the next 4 games. Cool. No harm, no foul. What does it look like after that? Are you going to stick with him even if he does go through a slump, an extended slump? He's hitting well right now, but we've seen with Gorman, sometimes you go through a 2-week stretch where it's a lot of strikeouts, not a whole lot of contact, and you have to stick with that to get to the other side. At times, the Cardinals have done that. At other times, they've said, can't do this right now. The offense isn't hitting. He's having too many non-productive at-bats. We've got to go a different direction. How do you make this work right now if you're Ollie Marmol?
I don't know how Ollie makes this work because it's too many chess pieces to put on the board right now. Because if you sent down Burley, to your point, now you really kind of create an opportunity for Thomas Saggese, at least in theory. I think right now you have to plan on, hey, we're going with, of course, Wynn at short. We're going to Donovan at second. Gorman just takes that DH spot that Alec Burleson was holding up, and you just kind of lock that in against right-handed pitching. Where it will be interesting to see is what they decide to do against left-handed starters, because they will just replace the DH spot with Luan Baker, I think. I think that's his role for this team. But if you're doing that, I don't think you're pulling Donovan out. He's been pretty good against lefties so far this year. And I don't think you're pulling out Nootbaar. He's been good against lefties. So where does Saggese get at bats?
What if he's the one that ends up actually taking that spot for Nolan Gorman? And it's Saggese that's your DH on those days instead of Luan Baker. And he just jumps him in the order.
I think that's possible. Like, I mean, I wouldn't have an issue with that at all. And then it would make more sense as to why you kept him up here and you just saved Luan Baker for, I guess, big at-bats against lefties when maybe a hard-thrown lefty comes in and there's like Nootbaar or somebody like that up. I wouldn't mind that. I'd be okay with seeing that. I just find it interesting how they are going to try and work this in, because I do feel like it's a little cruel to say to Luan Baker, hey, we're pulling you out of the lineup, because Luan Baker's been fine against left-handers. He's been doing his job so far. Now, he's only about league average. Saggese right now has been just on fire. So I could see where they say, hey, he's just better production-wise. Let's play him. He's up here. We've got to get him playing time. Otherwise, there's the fear of we may have to send him back down so he can get playing time. I will be interested to see how Ollie Marmol handles it against lefty. Because righties, I think it's easy. I think you're going with Gorman at DH. Donovan and Wynn are going to be in the lineup. It's the left-handed pitchers that it's going to be interesting, because the only guy that really has splits against lefties so far this season was Alec Burleson and Victor Scott. But I don't think they're going to go with Donovan in the left and push Nootbaar to center field. They clearly don't want to really do that unless it's break glass in case of emergency, or it is a desperate, hey, Victor Scott needs a day off.
Gorman hasn't been good against lefties this year. In the past, that hasn't been a huge issue for him necessarily, but this year he's not doing much of anything against him. Does not have an extra base hit, not getting on base, only hitting 200. It's also in 6 plate appearances. So he has had like basically 0 opportunities, and I think 2 or 3 of those came the other night. So I don't think it's necessarily something where you have to judge him too harsh for what he's done so far this year. Honestly, the guy that you could make an argument is most deficient against lefties is Victor Scott. But I don't think you're pulling him out of the lineup right now. He's just been too good, and he has too much value defensively for you in center field. He's an everyday player, and you live with the results. Like, you're not pulling out your 8-hole hitter. That's not the thing that you're potentially doing to be able to save yourself offensively. So I think it is a difficult thing. Ultimately, to me, it comes down to, like, you are going to give one guy a day off every day. Cardinals fans hate it. It's going to frustrate the living hell out of you. But understand this is the way that they can make it work. If you give Arenado one day off, Donovan one day off, Wynn is going to get days off right now because of the back that he's coming out back for. I shouldn't say that so definitively. Last year when they had this situation, Wynn was able to get days off to be able to rest that back, especially going into or coming out of off days. I would anticipate they'll probably do something similar this year with him. That would be my guess. And on those days, probably will be Thomas Saggese that's playing at shortstop for him. So you can make it work. You can get him in, Saggese, like 4 or 5 games every week by doing that. And it comes back to, well, you're going to have somebody still that is odd man out. I think the odd man out right now has actually gone back to Alec Burleson. Like that's how I feel right now. I think he looks like the bench bat to me. He's a bench bat, and Luan Baker is a true bench bat. And then you've got the backup catcher as well.
So I agree that Burley's the odd man out, but the way they operated, at least in this Braves series, and they've kind of been starting to do this, which is, hey, there's a spot that looks like, at least in my opinion, it looks like a clear potential pinch hit situation. I'll go to that second game against the Braves. You get to the 6th inning, bases are loaded. The Braves basically played their hand by walking the bases loaded with Contreras up with a lefty on the mound, and they said, we want to go against Nolan Gorman. To me, that screams, oh, you kept Saggese for this moment. Or you could go to Baker, one or the other, and then you still have Saggese for the moment to go out there and play defense because Gorman was at second base. And they don't do it. And then go to today's game, as we're recording this on Wednesday. They have a chance to potentially pinch hit for Jordan Walker, who comes up with runners on, 2 outs, big situation again, game's tied 1-1 in the, I believe it was top of the 8th inning. And Donovan is available to pinch hit. Now, he may not be able to play the field, and that may be the whole reason for it. But again, they don't go to it. And the Braves played their hand because Brian Snitker went from a right-handed reliever to another right-handed reliever that had a nasty slider to go against Jordan Walker.
60% slider usage.
For that moment, exactly.
The reliever that they brought in was basically, this is a Jordan Walker killer.
Exactly.
We dare you to go to your bench here. And Ollie Marmol said, you got me. I'm not doing it. And you're right. Some of that might have been, we can't put Brendan Donovan in the field. He's dealing with the rib thing. We really want to get him the 48 hours off here. That may have been the situation. But this wasn't a one-off. This has been the way that they've operated, really, I would say for the last 10 days or so, is they're not going to these late game pinch hit situations. They're sticking with their young guys. And they want them to go through some of the struggles or have the opportunity to have those big hits in late moments. They did this with Mason Wynn. I think it was right before he got hurt, if I'm not mistaken, where they had him come up, where it was a pretty clear, hey, you're going up against a big-time righty reliever here, game potentially on the line. You've got a left-handed bat coming off of the bench. I think it was Gorman at the time, if I'm not mistaken. And they decided not to do it because they wanted to see if that was the moment where Mason Wynn could get himself going offensively. He didn't. It didn't work out for them, but I think that was the moment to me where this all shifted. And it started going in the direction of, we're sticking with our young guys in these spots. We're not going to go out there and utilize the pinch hitters the way that we had earlier in the season. I don't know what made that shift. I don't know if it is they just have more confidence right now in their left-handed hitters against lefty relievers. That's possibly playing into this as well, but I do think it's notable.
And the reason I brought that up is because you mentioned Burley, the odd man out, now moves to the bench. What does that mean then? And then what does that mean for Luan Baker? They talked about in the offseason, and it was a question you had asked Ollie at winter warm-up of like, hey, well, like, what do you do with like pinch hitters? How do you handle the situation? He said, well, we got to develop a guy off the bench to potentially come into this. And I love the way that they prepared Baker for that in spring training. Love the way they prepared him for it. And he's come in and he's done that exactly. But if you're going to have these moments and you're not going to do it, well, now you've just got guys that are just riding the pine. Now, maybe their counter to me would be, hey, well, we're only going to play Contreras twice in a 3-game series at first base. That third day, he's going to be the DH and Burley's going to be at first. Okay, maybe that's how then you're getting the at-bats. But then you're not probably getting these at-bats for Baker that we're talking about. Or Saggese. One of those two guys isn't getting at-bats.
If you do that, then eventually it becomes Saggese that is the odd man out on those days. So maybe it's a balancing act, right? You're playing 6 games in a week. 4 of those games, it's probably going to have to be Alec Burleson. That's the odd man out. And then in 2 of them, it's Thomas Saggese. That's just the odd man out, and there's nothing you can do about it. They have too many guys for too few spots right now. It is technically a good problem to have, but it is still a problem nonetheless that they have created, and honestly, I give them credit for it. They kept Thomas Saggese around because he earned the opportunity. Some of it might be because Brendan Donovan's hurt right now, and they wanted the extra insurance just in case they don't have to play a man down right now with the middle infield. But I think they were probably leaning this direction anyways, and Donovan getting hurt was just a way for them to talk themselves into what they already wanted to do. So I like that they kept Saggese here. I think it makes the big league roster better, and I think there have been too many times in the past where they don't value enough. Just give me the best 26-man roster, and let's see what that looks like. Allow your manager, who I think all he does is best work a lot of the time when he has a deeper bench, allow your manager to then go and utilize all of the pieces that are at his disposal. But, as you mentioned, right now, he's not utilizing all of the pieces that are at his disposal because they're not going to those pinch hitters late. So it's a lot of different things. They're all self-imposed restrictions on their own roster that are leading to them playing not necessarily like a man down, but they're playing left-handed in some of these situations. No pun intended.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me is I agree. I think at times they don't utilize their 26-man roster. That's why I hated the Taylor Motter situation where it was, well, we just need a guy to sit on the bench for us. And then they ended up using him way more than they should have. But are you really maximizing your roster if you're basically just self-imposing, we're not going to pinch hit when these situations dictate themselves? And I get they're looking for answers on these young guys. And I'm okay with it if that's long as it is a consistent message. But it's changed. I mean, you mentioned it's changed in really the last 10 days. And I think it's okay to even admit, hey, Nolan Gorman, though we are looking for answers on him, we kind of know if we have a better option on our bench against a left-handed pitcher, we should pinch hit for him. To me, it just feels like they want all these answers, and they're kind of giving up on the whole let's maximize the roster and let's kind of push for some wins. When I think you can still do that. I still think this is a good ball club, and I don't necessarily, and maybe this is just me who grew up as a guy that was in the midst of that, as you mentioned earlier, the 20 years of winning. I've never really gone through this growing up as a Cardinals fan. So maybe this is more of a fan's frustration than what should be a media person's opinion. To me, they've got to start pushing more for a little bit more of that winning urgency rather than just saying, well, let's just have some guys sit the pine and we're going to not go through these pinch hit situations. No, try and take advantage. Saggese should try and develop as a bench bat along with potentially getting everyday at-bats, right? Same for Nolan Gorman of, hey, what does he look like when he's in the lineup every day? Also, what's he look like if there is a scenario where we need him to pinch hit? Those are answers that they need to get this season.
They are, and I don't know if they're going to be able to answer all of those questions. And some of it's their own doing. Some of it is the way that the roster is constructed. Some of it is probably just going to be injury questions that emerge over the course of the full season. It's a tough spot, and I do not envy the position that Ollie Marmol's in. I know everybody's getting on him today, and I don't blame you. He's the man that ends up taking all the questions post-game. He knows he's got to wear this, right? That's the job that you wanted. It is the job that pays the best when you get into coaching in Major League Baseball, and it is one that comes with a lot of criticism. That's the role. But, man, I don't envy his hand that he's been dealt right now because he's supposed to win. He's supposed to develop players at the Major League level. He is supposed to get guys back to what they once were at the Major League level, talking about the bullpen right now. He is supposed to navigate all of the playing time issues that have clearly started to emerge. We talked about this in 2021, I guess it would have been, with the outfield. 23, actually.
23, the year everything early went sideways.
With the outfields, and they ended up having too few spots for too many guys, and it became this revolving door, and nobody felt like they could get the runway that they needed. And it feels like that, to a degree, is happening. I think they're managing it much better this year, but to a degree is happening again. I don't know how you do all of that as a manager. Like, there's just too many things that are being thrown at you at once. And while all of that's taking place, your bullpen is just blowing up all over itself.
And I'll add one more to that list. It's impressing the next president of baseball operations in Chaim Bloom. And I don't think we're here yet. And again, I think Ollie is a good manager. I don't know if he is in that top 5 of great managers. I also don't think he's in the bottom 5 as the worst managers in baseball. I think he's a good manager, and especially when you give him enough pieces to work with. Look what he did in 2022. But the problem that I think he is having, or what he will run into, is one, trying to impress Chaim Bloom. And the other thing, too, is if he doesn't find a way to start winning with this roster, I almost wonder if Chaim Bloom has to look at this and say, boy, we may need to just go with a refresh overall across the board when I take over. Because otherwise, if Chaim Bloom sticks with Oli Marmol, who could be coming off of potentially 2 losing seasons in the last 3 and potentially missing the playoffs in 3 straight seasons, okay, it's nice Chaim Bloom's taking over, but the fan base has already got their guy that they're still not happy with. And if you're Chaim Bloom, you almost have to start from scratch here and say, hey, new president of baseball operations, if Ollie's not winning, do you have to potentially change the manager? Again, we're not there on those conversations yet, but I would add that into why I feel for Oli Marmol, because he is in a really difficult spot with the change at the top here in the front office.
Well, that's part of it, right? Just on a human perspective, like, imagine you're in a position where you're trying to win to maintain your job, a good job, a well-paying job, a job that your entire professional baseball career has been striving toward. Like, this is it. This is what you've always wanted. And now you've got this handoff in the front office where you have a bit of a relationship with Chaim Bloom, but he has relationships with others in Major League Baseball. And if we're being honest, man, full disclosure, Albert Pujols is out there, who's a friend of Oli Marmol, but is also trying to get a job as a manager in Major League Baseball. Yadier Molina has made it known to everybody that will listen. He wants to be a manager in Major League Baseball.
Would love to get back.
Skip, I think, is probably going to be the next manager of the Rangers, but sure, if Bruce Bochy decides to stick around for another year and this job were to open, I would imagine that there'd be some mutual interest there potentially, and if nothing else, he's a guy that you probably have to talk to if you're in Chaim Bloom's shoes. So you've got all that, and you're trying to win to impress upon Chaim Bloom, hey, I'm doing a good job here, but you're also trying to develop these guys at the Major League level, and you've got this bullpen that's a problem for you, and you've got all of this other stuff that's being thrown at you. It's tough. It's a really difficult situation, and right now the Cardinals are trying to navigate it, and I think they did a pretty darn good job for the first couple of weeks of the season, and I would say over the last week, things have really gotten rocky. So what I want to talk to you about coming up next, T-Bone, is what lies ahead. Because the Cardinals are about to have a huge stretch of games against NL Central opponents. We've only seen one series so far this year against a Central Division opponent. It was frustrating, to say the least. What lies ahead for the Cardinals in their next 7 games, and what can we learn from it? We'll talk about that next year on the Redbird Report. We're back on the Redbird Report. So the Cardinals have 7 games coming up against NL Central divisional foes. 3 against Milwaukee this weekend, 4 on the road at Cincinnati, and we know that always goes well for the Cardinals and their pitching. Milwaukee is also an opponent that early on in a couple of the recent seasons has been the team that kind of makes you think to yourself, not quite there. We're not quite there this year. They are just a little bit better than us. And this season, they're not the team you're chasing. Now, they're a team that the Cardinals are chasing. They're looking up at them currently in the division. The Brewers are 3.5 games up on the Cardinals. The Cubs are the team you're really chasing right now. They're one of the better teams so far this year in Major League Baseball. The Brewers are a team you should be able to stack up against okay. But last year, this was really when you knew. Cardinals were 9-10. They drop a 3-game set against the Brewers, and we leave that saying the Brewers are just doing stuff that you used to do better than you do it now. So, T-Bone, how are you feeling going into this 3-game set against the Brewers with the understanding that coming off of that is 4 at Cincinnati?
Well, I I think this offense is going to give them a chance. I don't necessarily buy into the Brewers pitching. Now, granted, I said that a week ago on this podcast about the Mets, and that did not age well at all. And then kind of the same with the Cincinnati Reds. Like Hunter Green's a really good arm that they've got. I don't know if I really buy into them. I think if they can, again, if they make changes to this bullpen, they're going to have a chance because I view these teams in this stretch of games right now. I think in the NL Central, you mentioned everybody's chasing the Cubs. I think they were by far, coming into the season, have really solidified this. They were in a tier of their own when it comes to the National League Central. I think the Brewers, Reds, and Cardinals are all kind of the same right now. Because, I look at the way the Reds are playing. They're kind of starting to figure themselves out. Brewers, kind of the same thing. Cardinals are kind of free-falling. But when you look at the expected win-loss, the Pythagorean theorem they like to use, which is basically, hey, what should your record probably be with your run differential? Yep. Brewers, 13-11. Reds, somehow 16-9. And then the Cardinals, 13-12. To me, you're right there with those three teams. And I think this series is going to be very telling as to these two series are going to be very telling as to where you belong in the National League Central. Do you belong as kind of the team that emerges ahead of the Brewers and the Reds as that second best team in the NL Central that might have themselves a chance to kind of figure things out and potentially chase down the Cubs this season? Or are you going to get smacked around a little bit like you have in recent seasons where the Reds just beat the crap out of you when they're at their home ballpark in the Great American Small Park? And then do the Brewers just say, okay, well, this is nice, but we're the big brother now. You're the little brother, and we're going to push you back down because you lose these two series. It will be where Cardinals fans definitely say, if they're not already there, where they definitely will look at it and say, this season is over. It's the same story as it has been the last couple of years, where the team falls apart in April and they get put in their place by their rivals in the NL Central.
The Brewers make me nervous because they have such a classic combination of the speed and power. I mean, they're running like crazy once again. This year on the season, they have 34 stolen bases as a team. Terang already has 8. Frelick has 7. Yelich has 5. So they're going crazy on the base paths. Oh, did I mention that they have 25 home runs on the season? They're hitting the ball. They're long ball plus stolen bases. That's not exactly a recipe that has gone super well for the Cardinals so far this year. That sounds like the Red Sox series, where the Red Sox got activated on the base paths. There was nothing the Cardinals could do to stop them. The Cardinals pitching had an issue, and it's probably worth noting going into this series, one of the pitchers that's scheduled to go for the Cardinals is Sonny Gray, who has his own issues with the whole long ball problem right now. So I will be curious to see how this looks, man. It does not give me the warm and fuzzy feelings to see that they've got a couple of starters going up that are, talking about the Brewers, scheduled to start against you that have been highly effective this year, including Jose Quintana. That'll be a real test to find out what the Cardinals' plans are going up against left-handed pitchers as well. I don't feel good about it. You're 10-15. You're coming off of back-to-back series on the road, New York and Atlanta, where you just lost 6 out of the 7 games. Couple of them were legit heartbreakers. They've been a much better team at home so far this year, but if you lose, even if it's 2 out of 3 against Milwaukee, and then you go to that bandbox that is Cincinnati, potentially lose 3 out of 4, boom, good night, sayonara, see you later. That's the season right there, dude, for most fans. I'm not telling you it's actually over, but it will feel as it did last year, where the season technically was not over. They ended up being in it to the point at the deadline where, hey, let's go get Eric Fetty. Let's go get Tommy Pham. Let's see what we can do here down the stretch. No fans cared. No. Fans were arguing on our show they should be trading Ryan Helsley and they should be selling off assets, not buying them. And they ended up being mostly right, but the team finished above 500. The season was not officially over. It just felt that way early on. And that will be the feeling if they once again get shoved down by a big brother in the division like the Milwaukee Brewers in this set.
I'm glad you brought up last year because I was just about to myself because they got off to the poor start and they did play well enough, but they didn't play well enough to become true buyers. They played well enough to become 50-50.
That's fair.
Of what are we going to do? Are we going to buy or should we sell high on Helsley? And I think the argument to sell high on Helsley was a fair argument with the one more year of control at that point last year. And the reason I bring that up is if you get off to a slow start and you lose the series to the Brewers, you lose to the Reds, which, by the way, are kind of the same thing as the Brewers, 10th in stolen bases, 10th in home runs so far. Oh, and you're at the Great American Small Park. I I can see where all of a sudden now, even if you do what last year's team did into this, hey, we push ourselves a little bit. We push ourselves kind of to where we're back on that fringe playoff team, and you look at it at the trade deadline, well, what does Mo do? Last year, his 50-50 call was, we are buying because I don't want us to have back-to-back losing seasons. That's not good for us as a brand, and that's not good for us to get people in the stands. And it ended up backfiring on him to an extent. Not too bad, but it just didn't work out.
Still got Fetty. It worked out okay.
Yeah, and we might be trading him this year. But the reason I bring that up is because if it's a 50-50 call this season, to me it is a clear we are selling. You've got too many good assets to just say, well, let's maybe attach a QO to him, or maybe we just let that guy walk in free agency. Ryan Helsley will be one of the most sought-after relievers in baseball. Eric Fetty, I don't know what his value will be on the trade market. He'll carry a little bit of value. If Maton continues to pitch well, he'll be highly sought after. It will not be a 50-50 call. We may look at it and have the conversations on the podcast, on our show of, oh, should they buy? We might even convince ourselves of it. I can tell you the front office will probably look at it, and they will say, what is best for us in the long run? And the answer should be, we sell at the deadline.
So that's what I was about to say. There is no 50-50 decision. Like, it's not a call either way. You have to force their hand. And that's why the beginning of the season, we said this coming into the year, it's so important for them to get off to a good start. Because A, it's the fan base, right? The ballpark's dead right now. There's no energy. People are not as into it this year as they have been for 25 years here in St. Louis, 27 years now in St. Louis. And B, it's about not only regaining the trust of the fans, but also forcing the hand of the front office, saying to them, no, there's no decision to be made here. This is a team worthy of investing in, or at least worthy of not tearing off the pieces from. You think this bullpen is bad right now?
No.
Go ahead and remove Ryan Helsley and Phil Maton from the equation.
Oof.
Go ahead.
Oh,
let's see what that looks like. Because that's what it could be starting in August. And if that were to happen, dude, it's a disaster. What does this rotation look like if you take Sonny Gray off of the top of it? Because I don't know what Sonny wants to do. He said in the offseason he wanted to be here. He also left open the notion that he could end up changing his mind on that depending on what the season looks like. Well, season isn't looking great right now, and if it continues to go in this direction, maybe he does decide, I'd be open to other opportunities. So this thing can absolutely get worse. And the way that happens is if they keep operating this way. Again, it goes back into it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't want this to happen, but you keep seeming to make decisions that lead to the same place. So Cardinals are back in action this weekend, going up against a Central Division foe for just the second time this year. We said going into the last road trip, T-Bone, that we thought it was going to be a roughly 500 road trip for the Cardinals. They'd return home somewhere around that 500 record. That didn't happen. They went 1-6 on the road trip. So we had really poor predictions last time that we did this, but let's go ahead and do it again. We will have 6 games played between when we are recording right now and the next time that we will be back on the Redbird Report podcast. In those 6 games, they will have played 3 against Milwaukee and 3 against Cincinnati. What will the Cardinals' record be in those 6 games?
Okay, so I'm going to say they go lose 2 or 3 to Milwaukee. So you're take 2 or 3 from Milwaukee. Excuse me. They can win at home. They win at home. Okay. Road games is where they stink.
All right.
So that's 2-1. I think they probably lose the first 3 in that Red series. Okay. So I think they will be 2-4 by the time we record this podcast next week, because I think they'll avoid a sweep. I think they'll go 1-3 in that Red series.
We're in similar spots. I think it's basically 1-2, 1-2 in each of those 2 series. You end up at 2-4 overall. You've got a 12-19 record, and by this time next week, I think people are starting to come to the whole acceptance phase of this is just what it is for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, man,
I hope
so
all of that sounds so ridiculous by the time that we get back on the air next week, but that's where we're at. He's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. If you've made it this far in the podcast, we sincerely appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week to the Redbird Report. Be sure to subscribe. Check us out on the YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. We have this unbelievable studio that they've put together for us. Zane does a fantastic job for us on the video production side of things as well. Shout out to him for that. Shout out to you for taking a listen to this today as well. We will talk to you guys next week on the Redbird Report here on 101 ESPN.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.